The upcoming Final Fantasy set is offering us so many cool new commanders. You can play as Lightning and double your damage output. Or you could play as Garland. You can use Sephiroth to place cell counters that will turn all of your creatures into huge 7/5s. Or you could play as Garland. And you can slot Yuna into your command zone and buff up all of those new Saga summon creatures. Or you could play as Garland. Okay. I'm aware that Garland, Knight of Cornelia, definitely isn't the most exciting of the new commanders that we're getting. This uncommon 3/2 lets you surveil a lot and can transform into a 5/5 flyer for 7 mana. Yay! I'm also aware that Garland isn't really the most popular Final Fantasy character, given that they appear in 2 whole scenes in Final Fantasy 1 and don't have much in the way of characterization beyond being a traitorous knight who's, kind of a jerk. But I think there's a lot more to Garland than meets the eye. He didn't get his own edgy Souls-like spin-off for nothing after all. And in Dissidia, that's Final Fantasy's version of Super Smash Bros., he was voiced by Christopher Sabat. That's the voice of Vegeta, and Piccolo, and about 90% of the rest of the cast of Dragon Ball Z. Nothing will be able to stop you if you have the power of Garland and anime on your side. You see, I've spotted something about this seemingly forgettable card. I think that humble, unassuming Garland may actually be the best commander in the game for a particular, very niche deck archetype. Let's get brewing, and I'll show you what I mean. The secret to playing as Garland is taking a big ol' imaginary marker and covering over its second ability, as well as its reverse side. Don't actually blot all of this information out, unless you're looking to build a Sharpie cube, in which case go wild, but just pretend that the only thing this card is a free 2 for 2 that lets you surveil 1 whenever you cast a non-creature spell. That's actually quite good. It's close to having a Dragon's Rage Channeler in the command zone. The extra black pip means that Garland costs 1 more mana, but he also provides access to a second colour. Speaking of dragons, do you hear that? Off in the distance. I think there must be a dragon approaching. That's right, Dragon's Approach. This 3 mana sorcery from Strixhaven is an archetype all by itself. You can have any number of this card in your deck. When you cast Dragon's Approach, it deals 3 damage to each opponent, and then you can exile it, alongside 4 other cards from your graveyard with the same name, to bring a dragon from your library straight into play without having to pay its mana cost. Being able to swoop a huge 7 or 8 mana threat into play with this is naturally pretty powerful, and you can fill the skies with dragons before your opponents have a chance to stop you. But where does Garland factor into this strategy? After all, he's not even a dragon. Well, since he surveils, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, he can help you dump copies of Dragon's Approach straight from your library into your graveyard. Every time you cast this deck's signature spell, he'll check what's on top of your deck, and if it's a Dragon's Approach, boom! Dump it straight in the graveyard, and you're 1 step closer to getting a dragon straight into play from your deck. I've attached a relatively budget build of this deck down in the description, depending on where you buy your copies of Dragon's Approach. Let me talk you through it. Alright, so first of all, get your hands on 30 copies of Dragon's Approach. That's unfortunately the most expensive part of putting this together. As for why you need 30 copies, well, some deck builders go a bit higher when building around cards like this, and some go a bit lower. But I think 30 is the sweet spot, where you'll draw into them reliably enough to get the strategy online quickly, but not so frequently that it'll feel like it's the only card in your deck. Now let's move on to the dragons themselves. To keep things nice and affordable, I've not gone for anything too out there like Terror of the Peaks, but I'll have an upgrade section in a moment where I'll talk about the best possible options if budget is no concern to you. For now though, the first dragon I'd recommend grabbing is Lathlis, Dragon Queen. If you get Lathlis out first, she'll ensure that every subsequent dragon you play will be reinforced by a 5/5 flying dragon token. Follow her up with a Caldera Pyamore that grows stronger as the game progresses, whilst providing consistent bursts of burn damage. After that, the dragon you should fetch depends on what the game state looks like. Tyrant's Familiar can be used to remove threats, and Bladewing the Risen can reanimate dead dragons. Red Dragon and Spawn of Phraxes sucker punch your opponent as they come into play, while Maniform Hellkite will cause all of your dragon's approaches to spawn free dragon tokens that can punch in for some damage, and at 4 mana it's cheap enough to be hard cast if it ends up in your hand. Once you've got a board full of dragons ready and raring to go, bring down Terror of Mount Velis to grant them all double strike, which may just be able to close out the game. Aside from the dragons, what other creatures do we have hanging around? Well, Anger is a card that we'll want to surveil into the graveyard in order to grant our dragons haste to let them attack that much sooner. Magus of the Wheel is a wheel effect that can chuck a handful of dragons' approaches into the graveyard and then draw us a new hand. The Magus isn't quite as efficient as casting Wheel of Fortune, but it's also hundreds of dollars cheaper. Stitcher's Supplier is also here to dump copies of Dragon's Approach into the graveyard. That just leaves us with Gutter Snipe and Stormkiln Artist, which are Spellslinger payoffs that will reward us for all the dragon's approaches that we'll be casting through the game. Moving away from creatures and onto enchantments, Fiery Inscription is another Spellslinger payoff that will burn the opponents while we cast dragon's approaches. Phyrexian Arena is a draw engine that some players have gone off, but I still stand as a way of keeping our hand stocked up with dragon's approaches. Corroding Dragonstorm provides a bit of extra burn damage and helps surveil more dragon's approaches into the graveyard. You'll be able to recast it so many times thanks to all the dragons you'll be getting out. Pyromancer's Ascension copies our dragon's approaches, doubling up that burn damage, and Artist Talent is an incredibly versatile effect that provides help both digging through the deck, a discount for non-creature spells, and some bonus damage. Then there are our staple cards. Sol Ring, Rakdos Signet, Arcane Signet, and Talisman of Indulgence provide some ramp. Big Score, Cathartic Rune, and Faithless Looting act as draw spells that can also discard copies of Dragon's Approach into the graveyard. A copy of Blasphemous Act Seer, since it's Red's best board wipe. Feed the Swarm and Withering Torment are here to deal with enchantments. A Braid and Vandal Blast are here to deal with artifacts. And a copy of Chaos Warps around to deal with, well, pretty much anything. That just leaves us with a few final spicy tech cards to discuss. We've got Reforged the Soul to give us another wheel effect, Locket of Yesterdays to provide a big discount on our dragon's approaches, and Chandra Tortured Defiant has a suite of effects, all of which are pretty useful here. Our final card, Secret Salvage, is a sort of delightful sub $1 card that just so happens to work great in this deck. This Forgotten Kaladesh card lets you exile the dragon's approach from your graveyard in order to fetch every card with the same name from your deck. Grab all of your dragon's approaches and then discard all but a few of them into your graveyard at the end of your turn. This will give you enough fuel to play out the rest of your dragons in a single, probably game-winning sequence on your next turn. I've kept the land base very simple here. No shocks or fetches, just some cheap options like Sulphurous Spring, Rakdos Cornelia, Haunted Ridge, Dragon Skull Summit, and, of course, Command Tower. I've also included War Room as a handy way of getting some card advantage. Make sure you run more mountains than swamps with this deck, since you're going to be casting Dragon's Approach multiple times during your turn, but don't cut black too much, since you want to reliably be able to get Garland out by turn 2. With that, I've talked about literally every single card in the deck. That's the advantage of running 30 copies of the same thing. It leaves us with lots of time to cover everything else without overloading on information. Now, let's start talking about some upgrade options if you've got some spare dough to throw around. Okay, so if budget really is absolutely no problem to you, then you can get yourself a copy of Wheel of Fortune. It's hundreds of dollars, but it's the namesake wheel effect, and nothing can get your dragon's approaches ready to go more quickly. I still wouldn't recommend getting this card though unless you're really comfortably able to. You could buy a lot with a few $100. Terror of the Peaks typically goes for about $20, at the very least, usually quite a bit more. It turns all of your creatures into burn spells as they enter play, and will let you close out the game much more quickly. It should probably be one of the first dragons that you fetch if you have access to it. It's really strong. Thrumming Stone is another card that's usually about $20. It grants all of your spells Ripple 4, meaning that when you cast a Dragon's Approach, you reveal the top 4 cards of your library and then cast any spells of the same name. Those copies of Dragon's Approach then also have Ripple 4, turning on a potentially game-ending combo. Jeska's Will is a costly staple that improves just about any red deck. It grants a big burst of red mana alongside access to the top 3 cards of your library. Burgi, God of Storytelling, provides a red mana whenever you cast a spell, which doesn't go away when you change phases. This can keep you fueled up and ready to cast more iterations of Dragon's Approach than you'd otherwise be able to. Burgi's reverse side, Harnfell Horn of Bounty, also provides a discard outlet that lets you dump Dragon's Approaches into your graveyard, and lets you dig into your deck for more copies of the card. Ruby Medallion provides cost reduction for all your red spells, turning all of your Dragon's Approaches from 3 mana cards into 2 mana cards. Atvara Hellkite spawns a 6/6 dragon token whenever a dragon attacks. Thanks to a recent reprint, it's about $10, and it's a pretty awesome title card. Twin Flame Tyrant is a damage doubling effect from Foundations that also, coincidentally, happens to be a dragon. Both the burn from casting Dragon's Approach and your dragons themselves will really appreciate having this Tyrant in play. Urabrask, like Burgi, refunds a little bit of mana whenever you cast a Dragon's Approach, but also has the bonus of dealing a point of damage as well. Neat. Valakut Awakening lets you put cards from your hand back onto the bottom of your library, providing a useful way of getting dragons back into the deck where they can be cast for free, while also letting you draw more Dragon's Approaches. Then there's Dragon Tempest, which is about $5, and it grants all of your dragons haste, and has them deal damage to anything equal to the number of dragons you control when they enter play. That just leaves the land base, which of course you're free to bring out with shocks, fetches, Verge, Battlebond, and OG Dual lands if you're so inclined. And there we have it, a Garland deck that can knock them all down. We get so many new legendaries with every set now, and I like shining a spotlight on cards like Garland that just get lost in the deluge of more exciting seeming counterparts. There are so many cards like this. The Emperor of Polynesia looks dirtily and a bit awkward to enable, and has been decidedly overshadowed by the absolutely busted printing of Vivi that we got. But the reverse side's ability to deal damage to each opponent equal to the number of non-land cards in your graveyard looks like it has plenty of interesting applications to me. My challenge to all of you watching this, even if you're not hugely into the Garland deck that I've put forward today, is to try and build a deck around one of these forgotten commanders. Don't just look at the characters like Tidus and Yuna up there in the spotlight, try out some unsung heroes, like Shalinda, Yevon Acolyte, or Gogo, Mysterious Mime. I guarantee that you'll have a great time, and you'll learn new, cool stuff about deck building. If you want some more info about this brew, I've written an article about it for EDH Rec, that's linked down in the description. Also, I don't normally say this, but remember to like and subscribe. I'm almost at 2.5k subscribers, and it would be great to cross that threshold. I've got a Ko-Fi, which is sort of like a tip jar, linked down in the description, and I'm thinking about setting up a Patreon, so if you can provide that sort of financial support, it would really mean a lot to me. Thank you.